The Mexican-American War happened between the years 1846 and 1848. It was fought between the United States and Mexico. At the heart of the conflict was a disagreement about land and borders. Both countries believed they owned some of the same territory, especially the area that today makes up states like Texas, California, New Mexico, Arizona, and others. Let's go back a bit to understand what led to this war. In the early 1800s, a lot of Americans moved to Texas, which at that time was part of Mexico. These settlers brought their way of life with them, and over time, differences in language, culture, and government caused tension with the Mexican government. In 1836, the settlers in Texas decided they wanted to be independent, and they declared themselves part of a new country called the Republic of Texas. For several years, Texas acted as its own country, but in 1845, the United States decided to make Texas a state. Mexico still believed Texas was theirs, so when the U.S. added Texas, Mexico saw it as an unfriendly action. Things got even more complicated when the U.S. declared that the southern border of Texas was the Rio Grande River, while Mexico said it was further north at the Nueces River. This disagreement over where the border should be lit the spark that led to war. In 1846, President James K. Polk of the United States sent American troops to the Rio Grande. Mexican troops and American troops soon faced each other, and fighting began. Congress declared war on Mexico in May of that year. The battles of the Mexican-American War happened in many places. One of the most well-known was the battle at a place called Chapultepec Castle in Mexico City. This old castle was defended by a group of young Mexican cadets, some only teenagers. They became known as Los Niños Héroes, the boy heroes, for bravely standing up to the U.S. soldiers even though they were outnumbered and outmatched. On the U.S. side, generals like Zachary Taylor and Winfield Scott led the troops. Winfield Scott even marched all the way to Mexico City, the capital of Mexico, and captured it. The U.S. Army took control of many cities and towns during the war, and eventually Mexico could no longer defend its territory. In 1848, the two countries signed a peace agreement called the Treaty of Guadalupe Hidalgo. This treaty officially ended the war. In the agreement, Mexico gave up a large part of its land, over 500,000 square miles, about half of its territory at the time. In exchange, the United States paid $15 million to Mexico and promised to protect the people living in those newly added lands. Because of the treaty, the United States gained land that became all or part of 7 western states: California, Arizona, New Mexico, Nevada, Utah, Colorado, and Wyoming. This new land greatly expanded the size of the U.S. and played a big role in the country's growth. California, for example, became famous just a year later when gold was discovered there in 1849, starting the Gold Rush. But not everyone felt the same way about the war. Some Americans believed it was wrong to go to war just to gain land. A young man named Ulysses S. Grant, who later became a U.S. president, fought in the war as a soldier. But years later, he wrote that he believed the war was one of the most unjust ever waged by a stronger against a weaker nation. For the Mexican people, the war resulted in great loss. Many families suddenly found themselves living under a new government with new laws and different customs. Though the Treaty of Guadalupe Hidalgo promised to protect their rights, life was not always easy for them. Still, many of these families stayed in the land they knew as home, and today, their culture continues to be a rich and important part of the United States. The Mexican-American War changed the map of North America forever. It also changed the lives of many people from both countries. Some saw opportunities, while others faced new challenges. But out of this history came lessons about understanding, about fairness, and about how important it is to listen to different points of view. Today, the lands that once caused a great argument are home to millions of people from different backgrounds who live and work together. The war is a reminder that history is not just about battles and treaties. It's also about the people whose lives are touched by those events.